Overflow, written by Paul Powers, read by Drew Grimm. The storm had settled in like it had meant to stay. Rain hammered on the roof and windows hard enough that the glass rattled in their frames. Outside, the street had turned into a mirror, tarmac slick and black, every puddle catching the dull orange glow of the lampposts. Now and then a car hissed past, tires slicing through standing water, tail lights smearing red across the wet road before vanishing into the dark. The air smelled soaked and close. Damp leaves mashed into the pavement, old wood, salt riding in from the harbor. Dave stood in the doorway for a moment, after letting himself in, key still in his hand, listening. Not for anything in particular, just listening. The house felt sealed shut against the weather, warm and faintly stale. The smell of yesterday's dinner lingered under the heating. Something ticked in the walls, a small, persistent sound that had probably always been there. Pipes adjusting, wood contracting, the ordinary noises of a house that had outlived the people who first built it. Pugsley lifted his head from the sofa and snorted, tongue lolling out the side of his mouth. He did not bother standing. The pug had perfected stillness over the years, a compact, breathing potato of a dog that only moved when food or walks were involved. Yeah, Dave muttered. I'm home. He closed the door behind him and locked it, slower than he needed to. The bolt slid into place with a dull click that felt heavier than usual. He left his shoes where they fell, toes still pointed toward the door, and stood there a second longer than made sense, jacket half on, half off, as if waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. He dropped the jacket onto the hook next to the front door, walked across the room, and sank down on the couch next to the dog, the cushion sighing under his weight. His body felt used up, heavy in a way sleep never seemed to fix anymore. Work had been the usual nothing. Meetings that went nowhere. Emails that answered themselves. Hours spent feeling busy without being useful. He picked up the remote and pressed the power button. The familiar jingle of Jeopardy filled the room, voices overlapping, can tensioned, the same questions he never answered. It washed over him without landing. His hand found Pugsley's back and started stroking in a slow, thoughtless rhythm, fingers tracing the warm fold of skin behind the dog's ears. His other hand pulled his phone from his pocket. Tick-tock bloomed to life, a blur of faces and noise that passed before they registered. He flicked his thumb and let it all bleed together. Cooking videos, someone screaming in a car, a man explaining why everyone was wrong about something Dave did not care about. It all flattened into the same soft static. The rain filled the gaps between sounds, steady and relentless, loud enough that it felt like it was trying to get in, pressing itself against the walls and windows, testing for weaknesses. The longer Dave sat there, the more he became aware of patterns in it, changes in rhythm, a brief lull, then a harder burst, like knuckles rapping against the siding. A sharp metallic cough came from the kitchen. Dave's thumb froze mid-scroll. He looked up, eyes tracking the dark outline of the open plain room. The kitchen light was off. The sink gleamed faintly in the spill from the television. Nothing moved. The sound had already faded, swallowed by the hum of the fridge and the low rush of rain. He stayed still, waiting. When nothing followed, he exhaled through his nose, a short, humorless breath. Pipes, he told himself. Old houses made noises, and Salem was full of them. timber frames in basements dug when people did not think about moisture the way they should have. He had heard far worse. He dropped his eyes back to the screen, and in a heartbeat, was absorbed again by the mindless videos of TikTok. Still, the quiet felt altered now, as if something had paused to listen and then decided it was safe to continue. He scrolled without actually watching anything until his phone chimed to remind him of time passing. The dog snorted and shifted, annoyed that the stroking had stopped. Dave sighed and dragged himself upright. "All right," he said. "Come on then. Let's go for a walk." Outside, the rain slapped him full in the face the moment he opened the door. The cold cut through his hoodie and settled deep into his bones. Pugsley waddled out onto the soaked grass and immediately squatted, oblivious to the weather. Steam rose from the fresh pile as Dave bent to bag it, black plastic turning inside out around the heat and smell of it. The street was empty. The storm had driven everyone inside. Water streamed along the gutters, carrying leaves and grit towards drains that struggled to keep up. A streetlight flickered once, twice, then steadied, its buzz adding to the low chorus of the night. Dave glanced up at the houses opposite, all dark windows and wet siding. For a moment, he had the odd impression that one of the upstairs lights was on, that someone was standing there watching him struggle with the bag. He looked again. Nothing. Just his own reflection staring back, stretched and warped in the glass. Get on with it, Dave," he muttered, clipping the lead back on Pugsley's harness and turning for home. The house welcomed him back in with warmth and the faint click of the heating kicking in. He locked the door, slid the bolt, checked it twice without thinking. He peeled off his damp hoodie and tossed it into the laundry basket, then stood in the middle of the living room, feeling vaguely at a loss. The TV host was still laughing at his own jokes. Dave left it on in the background. The noise felt more comfortable than the silence of his life. He opened his phone again and began another round of doom scrolling, sinking deeper into the sofa. The evening stretching out in front of him like something to be endured rather than enjoyed. Another sound came from somewhere below the floor. Not a knock or a bang, more like a soft surge, as if water had been forced through a pipe too quickly, followed by a faint, elastic scrape. Dave held still. He counted to 3 without meaning to. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. The rain masked it. The pipes hissed. The fridge kicked into a louder hum and then settled again. He waited, heart giving a stupid little skip, but nothing followed. "Jesus," he said quietly, rubbing his face. "Get a fucking grip, Dave." He stayed where he was a while longer after that, scrolling without absorbing anything, shoulders hunched, listening harder than he wanted to admit. Eventually, the weight of his own exhaustion won out, and he pushed himself up, deciding on a bath. The thought of heat and water felt like the only thing he had to look forward to. Upstairs, he paused in the bathroom doorway before turning the light on. He stood there in the dark, hand on the switch, listening to the storm work its way along the outside of the house. Rain against the roof, wind in the eaves, the distant low rush of water moving where it always moved. He flipped the light on and immediately felt foolish. He turned the taps and watched steam begin to curl up, fogging the mirror. He poured in too much bubble bath without caring and went back to the bedroom to undress while it filled. Naked, he sat on the edge of the bed scrolling again, the blue light washing his pale face. The house sighed around him. Pipes shifted as water moved through them. A small sound came from below, a restrained movement he did not look up from the screen to acknowledge. The warm bath water wrapped around him like a second skin. Heat closed around his legs and hips, water sloshing softly as he adjusted himself. He let his head rest back against the tile, eyes closing as the ache in his shoulders began to loosen. Steam gathered above him, blurring the edges of the room, softening everything into pale shapes. He breathed slowly. For a while, he did nothing at all. Then the phone buzzed faintly in his hand, and habit pulled him back. TikTok felt wrong now, loud and frantic against the slow comfort of the water. He flipped past a few videos and closed the app. Reddit loaded instead, darker colors, slower. He scrolled through headlines and arguments, his body growing heavy, limbs slack in the warmth. Then an image stopped him. A naked girl, casually posed, like the photo had never meant to be shared. Nothing dramatic, just skin and a look that promised intimacy. He stared longer than he had meant to, admiring the curve of her body, and felt the familiar stir of arousal. It was automatic, something he had no real control over. He shifted slightly in the bath, embarrassed despite being alone. He glanced at the door, at the fogged mirror, as if someone might catch him. He opened his browser. The bookmark for his favorite porn site was already there. He tapped it without thinking, the page loading through the steam. Rows of intertwined naked bodies. Promises he did not believe about the hot women in his area. His breathing changed, shallow and uneven. That was when the silence pressed in. Not suddenly, but gradually, as if something had leaned closer. The hiss of pipes seemed to fall away. Even the rain felt quieter, more distant. He paused, finger hovering. He became aware of a tension, not imagined, not vague. From the bath's overflow, half drowned in shadow, an eye watched him. It did not emerge. It did not hurry. It simply existed there, wet and thick-lidded folds of flesh closing in a slow, indulgent caress before peeling open again. The blink was deliberate, patient, the way someone might savor a moment they had not been invited into. The water around Dave's legs shifted as he drew in a sharp breath. Tiny waves lapped at the porcelain. Bubbles popped and slid away. The eye did not move. The gaze traveled over him with obscene focus. It lingered on his stomach, traced the damp curl of hair between his legs, paused with unmistakable interest. He felt it move up his chest, along his throat, until it fixed on his face. In that stare was pleasure, recognition. It had been watching him choose. Another blink, slow, sticky, unhurried. Dave's heart slammed against his ribs. His hands scrambled at the sides of the bath, water sloshing violently now, his body jerking as panic took hold. The contrast was unbearable. His movement, its stillness. He screamed. He tried to stand and slipped, skin shrieking against the porcelain as he pitched forward. He fell hard, the impact driving the air from his lungs. Heat and water spilled everywhere. chaos where there had only once been quiet moments before. As he hit the floor, his bladder let go. The warmth of it was immediate and humiliating, cutting through the bathwater and steam with sharp clarity. It soaked into the towel beneath him, into the cold tile, a final, involuntary proof of how completely his body had betrayed him. He clawed backward, sobbing, dragging himself into the corner, wrenching the towel around his waist like it could hide him, like there was anything left to preserve. The bathwater rippled. Bubbles popped softly. The overflow was empty. Just porcelain, steam, the pale yellow stain spreading through the foam across the floor. Dave staggered into the bedroom, skin still steaming, towel clinging damp to his stomach. He collapsed onto the edge of the bed, shaking so hard his teeth clicked. Water dripped from his hair and elbows, darkening the sheets. He tried to think about what he had seen. His mind refused to hold it. The house breathed around him, calm and ordinary. The storm continued outside. Pipes shifted. Somewhere, water moved through the walls, exactly as it always had. Something beneath the bed shifted. Pugsley lifted his head. The dog did not bark or growl. He simply stared at the dark space beneath the bed, ears flattening slightly, a small, uncertain whimper catching in his throat before he turned his face away. Dave did not notice.